Hello, Trombone Internet. This is Chris Van Hoff, assistant to the regional manager of the International Trombone Festival. We at the festival, of course, are huge fans of the pod, and we are really excited to invite you to attend this year's 2024 International Trombone Festival at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Dave Begnosh is our host. We have the world premiere of a brand new double concerto for trombone and piano with the Fort Worth Symphony. We have the American Brass Quintet. We have late night jazz featuring a Latin jam session. Like, everything is happening. All the cast will be there. It's the best hang in the world, and we hope to see you there. You can register for the festival still online at www.internationaltrombonefestival.com, and it's happening the last week of May. So go register. We'll see you in Texas.
Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Today on the podcast, I sit down with John Kitzman, former principal trombonist of the Dallas Symphony of over 43 years. My name is Sebastian Vera, and I'm joined by Nicholas Schwartz. Nicholas, how are you?
I'm good overall. Been playing a lot of opera these days. How are you doing?
Still love technology, I know.
I want to go back to caveman times and send smoke signals to people.
We could do smoke signal podcasts somehow. Do you think people would subscribe to that?
How do they subscribe? Do they send you a beaver pelt or something?
Yeah. It's like you get the weather. We'll give you the weather every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And our thoughts on hunting season.
I don't think there's a hunting season in caveman times. You just hunted.
They just hunt whenever they feel like it. Nicholas, applications are open. I don't know if you knew, for the 2022 Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Guest artists include Megumi Kondo of the Milwaukee Symphony and Rick Stout of the Cleveland Orchestra, as well as Nick and myself. Final deadline is April 1st to submit your applications. There's also some early application deadlines where you can just apply, save some money, send your audition later. Final deadline is April 1st, so visit tromboneretreat.com for everything you need to know.
And I wanted to thank all of our Patreon members for their support in bringing these interviews to the world. Visit patreon.com/trombone retreat for access to the whole kit and caboodle of special features starting for as little as $5 a month.
And also, we would like to encourage you to register for the International Trombone Festival happening this July 13th through 16th, 2022, if you're listening in the future, at the University of Central Arkansas, which is actually very close to where a lot of my family is originally from. And we'd like to make a special announcement that we have secured our live guest for the International Trombone Festival, where we will do a podcast interview live. We had the first one last year with Joe Alessi, and it was a really special experience. And we would like to announce that we will be interviewing Mr. Christian Lindberg. Maybe you've heard of him.
Yeah, he knows all 6 scales, I'm pretty sure.
Oh my gosh, so many scales. So, John Kitzman, my former teacher, I've been looking forward to an opportunity to interview him in the right way for a long time. And I heard about this special event happening to honor him after teaching for over 47 years at Southern Methodist University. He's retiring at the end of this year. He was principal trombone in Dallas Symphony of over 43 years. And they had a special event at the University of Texas at Arlington to honor him. And I thought it would be an amazing opportunity to interview him live. And so we got to hang out for an amazing talk, and he was incredibly open. So there's a lot of perceptions out there of John Kitzman, and I believe he's pretty aware of them. And those closest to him that have studied with him really know him to be full of integrity and love for his students. But he's literally probably the strongest person I know, at least one of the strongest figures I've ever had in my life. So him at the end of this interview really opening up and getting a little emotional was incredibly impactful to me and everyone in the audience. And so I'm really looking forward to everyone being able to hear this.
Not being there, obviously, I watched it after it happened, but I've never met John Kitzman, but I've known of him and about him, and I know a lot of his students because he's put out a lot of successful students, including the John Sebastian Vera. And so it was really interesting to hear his story. And there were some things I knew in there just from trombone, I guess, lore. But there was a lot of things I learned about him and his past and how he got from where he was to where he is.
If you could design the perfect podcast guest, it would probably be him. Someone with a lifetime of experience, not afraid to share his actual opinion, and also emotionally vulnerable too, looking back at his life and his career. So I can't wait for you guys to hear this. I hope you enjoy this interview with John Kitzman. Hi. Hello. My name is John Sebastian Vera. I am a trombonist. Sounds like a Trombonist Anonymous meeting right now. My name is Sebastian Vera. I'm a trombonist. It's been 5 hours since I played a long tone. So like many of you, I am a former student of our guest today, man of honor. I've been wanting to interview our guest today for a long time, and I just wanted to do it the right way. And I always wanted to be able to do it in person. And when this event came around, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. So thank you to Dennis Buber and the University of Texas at Arlington for making this happen. And I also have to thank Houghton Horns for helping me get here and to make this happen. They're right down the street in Keller, Texas, purveyors of trombones, mouthpieces, accessories, music, and they are the best. Also, they ship everywhere internationally, and they're great repair people, so go visit them, go visit their showroom. HoughtonHorns.com. All right. So today's guest does not need an introduction, but he's going to get one. Principal trombone of the Dallas Symphony from 1972 to 2015. For those of you that weren't math majors, that is 43 years without an assistant. Professor of trombone at Southern Methodist University from 1974 to today, and that's just short of half a century. His students have held positions in such orchestras as the Dallas Symphony, Buffalo Philharmonic, Montreal Symphony, Pittsburgh Symphony, Cincinnati Symphony, every premier military band, I'm pretty sure, Pittsburgh Opera, Kennedy Center Opera House Orchestra, San Antonio Symphony, Nashville Symphony, Fort Worth Symphony, and many, many more, as well as numerous college professorships. It is an honor and a privilege to introduce Mr. John Kitzman. How's that feel to hear those numbers?
Daunting, and really kind of, it's like when you're a kid and you think your parents are 50 and you think, oh my God, they're so old. And you get a job and you start to, do stuff, you get involved, and the time goes by. And people say, oh, when are you going to retire? And I thought, well, maybe when I'm 75 or 70, or because those numbers didn't make any sense. And actually, you start to build stuff and you get involved in the building of it and doing it. I mean, I was very involved off the stage with the DSO, lots of contracts and committee meetings and trying to see our way to make it a better institution. And the same is true at SMU. Tom Booth, Greg Eustace, and I worked remarkably well together. And it was a pleasure to make decisions about what we were going to do in the future. We decided one day, we should really have studio class where the kids have to play at night. Okay, well, we really should bring all the brass together and have orchestral repertoire class so they all get a chance to play these big pieces, and we'll take them. No credit. We didn't get paid.
Really?
We didn't get paid, and we didn't. And the kids didn't have any credit for it. I was in a meeting once with this music history teacher. And she says, what is all this about this orchestral repertoire class? It takes up so much time. They should be studying. And how many semesters are you going to require them to be in that class? I said, well, let's see. They're here 4 years, 2 semesters, 8. and she, on top of her head, just about flew off. But that was it. And at first, it was just because we said, you're going to be in orchestral repertoire class, not would you like to be in orchestral repertoire class. And then you have to begin to deal with the paperwork and the administration of colleges. And Tom did all that. Tom just did it all, and
Saint.
We absolutely owe him a huge debt of gratitude. He was willing to fight the battles in the office and fill out the forms and do all that. And not all of my academic colleagues appreciated how serious we were about this part of it. And so there was a bit of a bridge, sometimes a little bump, pushback, as it were. And you'd be surprised to find out that I have a lot of strong opinions about certain things, like the way that's best to recruit and the kind of work that's required. And we used to, in juries, for example, guys would fill out jury sheets. On the jury sheet, it says course number, and then it says how many hours did you practice a week. Now, I realize that some students might have stretched the truth fractionally on how many hours a week they practiced, but let's say a trumpet player came in and he said, I only practice 5 hours a week. It was fair game for Mr. Eustace or myself to say, look at young man, if you practiced more, you'd sound better. And the teacher doesn't really like having their own student criticized. But in the long run, I thought the students gained from having people other than their primary teacher say, you could do better. Your legato's not very good. You play out of tune. Instead of hearing it from me all the time, they heard it from everybody. And all those things were very positive. The same was true for the DSO. When I joined, I got hired by Ancho Brusilov, was the first conductor to take a chance. And a great musician, really great. I learned a lot from him. And then in 1974, we went out of business. I learned a lot from that.
I want to get to that exact moment.
Okay.
But can I rewind a little bit?
Yeah.
All right. So Garden City, Michigan?
You bet.
And that's where we're born?
No. I was born in Whitewater, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin?
Yeah. And when I was born, my father was missing in action. I guess 44? Well, I was born in 45, so I don't know exactly when he went missing. He was a bomber pilot, flew B-24s, and bombed Italy and bombed Germany. And, of course, like all of the people of the Greatest Generation, he didn't talk about it at all until really the very, very end of his life. And B-24s were called flying coffins. If you've ever been in one or walked around one, you can see why. I don't know how those people did it. I have no idea. But when he came home from the war, and I think he weighed right around 115 pounds, and he was 6'1". Nearly lost his leg, huge gashes and things in his head. When he passed away, I found his records from the prisoner of war camp, and they were all in German and got translated. He had this big gash in his head, and his leg was nearly ripped off. It was hooked back on with a plate that was between the lower part of the leg and the upper part of the leg. And he fought with the Veterans Administration for years to get any part of a disability. So as much as people say, it sucks now that Veterans Administration doesn't take care of the veterans, they never took care of the veterans, as far as I'm concerned.
So you grew up with him post service.
Yeah. And we moved from Whitewater to Iowa City because he went to the University of Iowa to get his master's degree. And if you don't mind, I'll tell you the story. I met my wife. Did I do this? Diane. Her name was Diane Driggs at the time. And that's another whole story. Remind me to tell you that. But anyway, so we look at her father was in the war, and my dad was in the war. And my God, they both went to the University of Iowa after the war, and they both played the trumpet. So when I said, did you know a John Driggs when you were at Iowa? What did I know him? He sat next to me in the orchestra.
That's insane.
Yeah, but our mothers didn't know each other.
Whoa.
Yeah. So my dad and her dad sat next to me, and he, unfortunately, my Diane's father, had a massive heart attack and died at 42. So I never was able to make that connection. But he went to the University of Iowa, then he got his first job teaching high school in a town called Watseka, Illinois. One flashing light. He started the band program there. From that band, that he started everyone in the fourth grade on a private lesson. Every single one started with a private lesson. He had three of his startees in that little town went on to play professionally in symphony orchestra. Not bad. So he did that until I was in the 7th grade. We moved to Michigan, to suburban Detroit, Garden City, when I was in the 8th grade. The way I picked the trombone, he was a trumpet player, really good one,
And you wanted to play the trumpet.
I wanted to play the trumpet.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, well, He said, "We want to play." I said, "I'll play trumpet." Your lips are too big.
You thought your lips were too big.
My dad said my lips were too big. Then he said, "What do you want to play?" And I said, "Well, if I can't play the trumpet, how about the drums? Not in my house." And he looked at me and said, "Trombone." So he brought me a Martin trombone, one of those big square cases. And I started playing it. And there was a kid up the street who was in the high school band playing Bluebells of Scotland. I thought, boy, that is the coolest thing ever. So by the time we moved to Michigan when I was in the 8th grade, I could play Bluebells of Scotland. And so the first junior high school band concert, I played Bluebells, and my mother played the piano. And I looked down the front row, and there were all the high school trombone players sitting there. And that's that was great. And I was a big jock in junior high and high school. Believe it or not, in the 9th grade, I was the same height I am now. So I was a giant in the 9th grade.
So you started in 4th grade. So how old were you? Like 8?
No, 4th grade's 10.
10? Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
it's a little different. Okay.
I started on the piano in kindergarten.
So you could reach some position by that point.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, sometimes you see people starting so young that
They can't reach 7.
it's like they should be playing an alto or something.
Yeah. And look, he put a 6.5
Not a bad
AL
idea.
in the mouthpiece. I had a 6.5 that I played from the 4th grade till sophomore in college.
Oh wow! And then your teacher made you change.
No, I started to hear other people. I went to Interlochen when I was in high school. The first year I was a sophomore, and I studied with Henry Charles Smith. And that was boom, I mean, you heard him play and you thought, well, what is that? It's not an instrument I'm familiar with. And he was just so gracious and so nice and so, just so involved. You fell in love with him right away. That was all-state camp. And the next year I came back for the national camp in 1962. And I was on work studies. I was out sweeping sidewalks. And Henry came walking down across the street. And he walked over and he said, "John, how are you doing?" I'm in freaking high school. He's principal trombone in the Philadelphia Orchestra. I remembered my name. That was just, the kind of guy he was. Just always wanting to reach out to people. And then maybe, I would just say maybe there's one other guy, the most musical trombone player I ever heard. Nobody played more musically on anything. You could hear him play a scale and it sounded musical. I was a pretty big jock in high school, captain of the basketball team, all that stuff.
Golf.
And believe it or not, even though you and I have played basketball and you know that I'm not that good,
He talked a big game though.
I was offered
Before we
basketball.
played, he was like, "Oh, don't worry, I got that outside."
I was
shot."
offered a basketball scholarship to Western Kentucky University
Wow.
and a golf scholarship to the University of Michigan. I chickened out and took the music scholarship.
So I want to ask you briefly, like Henry Charles Smith. Anyone that studied with you knows how profound an influence he was on you. What would you say was the biggest thing you learned from him? Or was it just being around him?
That he thought about music all the time. He didn't think about, you got to do this, alternate position there, you got to take a breath here or that way. I don't believe he ever talked to me about taking a breath. Never did. But he talked to me about music all the time. I was playing symphonic metamorphosis for him. Bum, ba, ba, bum, bum, be, da, 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 da. He says, "John, what are the strings doing when you play this?" And I said, "I'm just trying to play this line. I don't really care what they do." He says, "You need to know what they're doing," and that was right. Of course, they needed to know what they were doing. And his openness to just an open soul. He came and did a master class at SMU. I don't guess any of you were there when he was there. Came. He didn't play. He wasn't playing. He really only played the trombone in the Philly Orchestra for about 12 years. Those were darn good years, from 1955 to 1967. The heart of the Philadelphia Orchestra, one of the 2 or 3 best orchestras in the world. And I just loved hearing him play. They came to Ann Arbor every year for the May Festival for about 10 days. So I heard him play lots of stuff, Yeah. Quick story, I heard him play Brahms first. The first concert I ever heard Philly Orchestra live. They played Academic Festival, some concerto, and Brahms first. So I'm in the balcony and in Hill Auditorium, and Brahms starts, second movement, third movement, I look down, Henry's got his horn, he's playing all this stuff, And I'm thinking, God, the Philly has a different edition of Brahms first, where the trombones playing the third movement. So finally came time for the chorale, and I've heard lots of orchestras play Brahms first, and I've played it myself a couple of times. And it's amazing to hear way different players, really good players, in great sections, great orchestras, interpret that chorale. Henry played it like it was a first trombone solo with accompaniment. Lom, bom, bom, bom. It was just glorious, So after the concert, I saw him backstage, and I said, Mr. Smith, it was just great. But I didn't know the trombones played in the third movement. And he said, well, they don't. I play along with the cellos, just to get my chops, warmed up. He said, we took this to Russia, and we played it every night for 10 nights. And one night, my chops felt really good, so I didn't play the notes in the third movement. And Ormandy gave me a dirty look, like I left something out. So, he was a profound influence, for sure.
And so you studied with him at Interlochen?
One summer, yeah.
And we just lost him, didn't we?
We did. Yeah.
Late last year?
Yeah, a couple months ago, a month ago.
And did you stay in touch with him?
Yeah, well, if I did something, he came and conducted, what did I play? Was it Tomasi? I think I played Tomasi and he conducted, or was it Per Breivik conducted that? He conducted some concerto that I played, and that was Tomasi. And Per must have done something else, because I remember very clearly he stayed at that hotel across the street from the music building. And he said, come on, I'll meet the day before the first rehearsal. We went down to my studio, and he had the score there, and he sat down in a chair at my desk, and he says, well, play it for me. Just the two of us in the room. I was so nervous. Just him and myself. And there's some funny little things in the score that are incorrect, in the second movement especially. And we worked all that out. And you know how you play a solo with some conductors, and they never hit the right tempo. Never. And you're fighting tempo all the way through. Henry was just right there, just right there. I admire him a lot.
We need more trombonist conductors.
I think he was too good a musician to be just a trombonist. I really
What do you mean? Okay,
I'm sad to say that. I'm sorry to say that.
So you had your Interlochen experience, which we've talked to so many people with, that it was such a special time in their lives, and being around other talented people maybe for the first time, and being around good competition and being inspired. And
lots of competition.
So in 1963, we enrolled into the University of Michigan, studying with Glenn Smith, and your experience with the Michigan band, and you had your golf scholarship that you were thinking about. What was it like being at the University of Michigan in the 60s?
Well, it was intense. It was really intense. Ravelli was a special person, and he insisted.
Tell them who that
Oh, there was a guy named William D. Ravelli, and he was the Michigan band director for, God, I don't know how long. He started a thing like the College Bandmasters Association. A lot of big things started with him. And at one time, of the Big Ten band directors, there were 10 of them, I think 8 of them were Michigan grads. He just was the man. And I didn't go to Michigan to be in the orchestra. I went to Michigan to be in the band. In 1962, they went on a tour of, it was Egypt and Rome and Russia, and they were gone for a whole semester. They missed a whole semester. And they came back and played a concert in Ann Arbor. When they came back, it was like mind-blowing. It was a 100-piece band, just sounded like perfect, And I thought, I want to be part of that. So at the time, I was playing in the Michigan Youth Symphony, and part of the deal with that was you could study with the teacher at the university, Glenn Smith. So I would go over, once a month, twice a month, and take a lesson with Glenn in Old Harris Hall, which was built in 1887 or something like that. And so we're in a lesson one day, and he says, John, if you want to come to the University of Michigan, we can arrange that. And I said, okay. That was it. I didn't audition anyplace else. I didn't think about anyplace else. Curtis, Juilliard, all that stuff. Never even thought about it. And
pretty close to home too.
Yeah, it was just far enough away from my parents that they wouldn't just come over and visit. But close enough I could go home and have my mom do my laundry, which was good.
That's why I went to SAU.
Yeah, there you go. So we started in '63, and I was the only freshman in the symphonic band. And we met 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. Marching band was 215 men of Michigan. No women. No twirlers, flag carriers, none of that baloney.
Was it like military style?
We high-stepped. We
High-stepped.
didn't...
Do you have any videos of you high stepping?
I think there are someplace. And, if you've ever seen the Michigan band, and be careful here, the band has changed, shall we say, from when I was in it. Anyway, we came out of the center tunnel, right across the yard lines, and I was the first one out from the rank of the trombone. So I was the first one out, and your first time, 18 years old, 104,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting. Then we would hit the 50-yard line, and we'd do what we call sweep the field. We'd play the victors 50 yards to the end zone, about face, 100 yards back to the other side. So aerobically, you were fairly fit. And you learned not to press. You really learned not to press. If you're high-stepping and pressing, you look like you were in a fight with Muhammad Ali. Your face looked horrible. So that was great. And Ravelli, I remember many, many things, all this stuff about, at the end of the day, if you look in the mirror and you can understand that you did the best you could all day, well, then you're a good person. If you didn't, you only have to blame yourself. Or if you played something, it was famous for first trombone, play. And you have to play. Whatever it was, whatever the passage was, you had to play it along. Second, play. And if two played it better than one, two moved up to one. And that happened every day.
Ooh. So were you always kind of scared going to rehearsals?
I morphed from, I was, as I said, I was an athlete. And the competition of competing, being that person that you're going to beat the other guy. At some point, I realized he wasn't going to beat me. I just wasn't going to let him beat me. I think he liked me. Why? I have no idea. But in your Anthe Overture, there's a passage where it's a cello part. It goes da-da-ga 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 dum bum da-da-ga da-da-ga dum bum. It's hard. First trombone, play. And there was a guy named Bob Sims, who was an engineering major, really fine trombone player. Ended up working for Ford as an engineer. And Ravelli didn't like him because he wasn't a music major. Second trombone, play. Well, I was first chair second, which was the third chair. So I played it, and I practiced and practiced. If I hit the first note really well, moved the slide a lot, and got the last note, and then the first note and the last note, it almost sounded like you were playing it.
Trombone hacks.
Yeah. So I did that, and he says, listen to that. The freshman, he's the only one that can, everybody else leave it out, you play it alone. So I got graduate students sitting all around me giving me the old evil eye.
So what were your biggest influences during that time? What was your exposure to hearing orchestras, hearing recordings?
Chicago Symphony came every year in the fall, every year. The first concert I ever heard them play was with Martineau, a very underappreciated conductor. And I know the guys in Chicago didn't like him, but I thought the orchestra sounded brilliant. They played that Inextinguishable Symphony live in Ann Arbor the year that they recorded it. I just thought it was astonishing, The first concert I ever heard Chicago play was La Mer, again, some damn concerto, and concerto for orchestra. And I lived in the dorm, and I went to the concert, and it was in October, I think, starting to get cool at night. I remember walking back to the dorm thinking, okay, well, I need to transfer into something else. Unattainable. Just give up. So I hung on, and then in the fall, Philly came and played Brahms first and all that. I thought, so hearing those orchestras were just great. And then in my second year, there was a new group of freshmen that came in, and Carl Hinterbickler was one of them. Dr. Hinterbickler now teaches at the University of New Mexico, and a guy named Stan Simcoe, bass trombone player. And they wanted to play excerpts. So we need somebody who can play high. You can play high. Come on, play excerpts. So we went in this room and started playing excerpts. And this is pre-Keith Brown. There were no Keith Brown books. The only books were Stoneberg. If you ever looked at the old Stoneberg books, you got the Pfeiffer Symphony, from some, like Bavaria or some nobody ever plays. Anyway, we copied out a whole bunch of stuff. So it started to be a big deal. We would meet, 2, 3, 4 nights a week and play extras. And over and over and over and over and over until they sounded the way we wanted them to sound. And then they had this huge record collection, these two guys. I mean, record collection times 10. I mean, they had a huge book, floor to ceiling bookcase, maybe 15 feet long.
Those are the big CDs.
Yeah, the big black CDs. And the wall was filled with records. You went over to the closet to hang up your coat, filled with records. So we'd go over there, and if there was a trombone section that played some passage fantastically well, they had it. If they had a section that played it fantastically bad, they had it. And we would just sit down and drink Kool-Aid and listen to records until, whatever. And that became a really important part of my life, those guys. Because they if you did this, these two guys, if you went, they say, oh yes, that's the Haydn 34th Symphony, viola part, second movement. There's some mistakes in that. There's an E flat in bar. I mean, it's ridiculous what they knew about it. Insane. So, I was like, they started playing. First time I heard Dennis Brain, they put on, listen to this guy play the horn. That's amazing,
But you're really highlighting something that I think, and I want to hear what you think about this. It is such an important part of a young music student's life, and not just from their classes or from their teacher. It's the culture within the studio of hanging out, getting excited with other people, listening to recordings, playing. I mean, so much of your education was probably from that and not even with your teacher.
Well, it didn't happen on purpose, but I tried to do that at SMU. I really did. The first 3 years or so, the students had to use the instruction booklet on how to get the trombone together. The big piece goes on the little piece, and the mouthpiece goes in the hole. They really couldn't play at all. And then we started to, Dennis came, Ronnie Wilson came, I had a couple other guys that could play. And then it just started to happen. I used to have a meeting, maybe you remember it, the beginning of every semester, where we would come in and I'd say, look we're a team. Trombones are a team. And if you can't work together, we're going to have a problem. You have to work together. I want you to work with one another. There's lots of stuff for you to play. Play. I don't want a bunch of backstabbing or egos in the way. We're a team. You don't go to a concert, I've said this 1,000,000 times, and say, oh, the second trombone player sucked. You go and say, the trombone sucked. So we live and die together. Either we're all good together or we're all bad together. And we begin at that moment to begin the idea of being a section. For me, honestly, at the end of my career in the orchestra, I can honestly say, and I recorded a lot of stuff, the stuff that we did as a section, it's the best.
I'm so glad you said that, and I got to record it, because that quote's always playing in my head, and I say that with my students all the time. Yeah, culture setting, it's such a unique thing, and it's fascinating, right? Like, you can have, sometimes it only takes one student to change the entire vibe of a studio, and vice versa.
No question. Lee Rogers sitting out there, he came in as a freshman, all of a sudden, people, this young guy can play, what's the deal here? And that made the other guys spin their wheels harder.
He knows all the notes.
What's that?
He knows all the notes.
He knows all the notes, right. A matter of fact, sometimes, I've had more than one student, Lee is certainly one of them, Jamie Box another one, but many others, where you assign them like a Boat's etude, hard as hell, come back and, by God, they can play it. Okay, that's pretty impressive, But even those people, there's never been a student that walked in my studio, maybe it's my fault, I don't know, where there wasn't something to get better at. There wasn't any student, there wasn't some part of their playing that they could improve, including yours truly. Hell, my low register is better now than it was when I played in the orchestra, because I've had time to work on it. I could always play high. That helped. If you want to play first trombone, it's good if you can play high and not worry about it. And when you hear recordings of people play, and I'm not going to name anybody, they just sound uncomfortable. They get through it, but it doesn't sound, I've got a recording of Masson, Gabriel Masson, playing the two dances with DeFay playing the piano.
Yeah.
When you hear Gabriel Masson play the two dances, it's easy. The high notes sound easy, and as they should.
And that tiny trombone he's playing on.
Tiny little, and it's very French, and I love it. I just love the fact that it's unabashedly French. And if there's some glissandos in there, because they don't really use legato tongue so much back in those days, perfectly fine. This sounds just like $1,000,000.
So after Michigan, you had a good time at Tanglewood. You were with Milt Stevens there. You got the Spalding Prize for Outstanding Instrumentalist. Pretty awesome for that to go to a trombone player. Mm-hmm. Any big memories stick out from Tanglewood?
Oh my God, so many. You think I thought things were pretty cool at Michigan, that we were rocking it pretty hard. And then you go to Tanglewood, and these people are all so good. I mean, the bass section was the first from Juilliard, first from Curtis, first in the Conservatory, first in the Cleveland Institute. The bass section was bananas. I mean, they were really great. And Milt Stevens and Frank Hunt was the bass trombone player. Neil Tidwell was the tuba player when I was in New Orleans, and then he taught at Duquesne, I think. Great tuba player, died way too young. And if you look on YouTube, if you look up Bartok Concerto, Boston Symphony, there's a deal on there. Bruce Faskey found it and said, "Is this you?" And so I don't know. So and look at it, and it starts right at the big interrupted intermezzo, about halfway through with the clarinet solo. Okay, I looked a lot different. Anyway, the story before that is really a good story. For some reason, I'm always amazed when a conductor likes me, because I don't go out of my way to like conductors, and I expect the same back. So the very first concert was Stravinsky Music for Winds and Harold in Italy, and Joy Silverstein conducted. And after the concert, they had a big party up at what they called the main house. So I'm there drinking all this in, and I feel this tap on my shoulder. I turn around. Eric Leinsdorf. Young man, good job tonight. Ooh. I mean, this is Eric Leinsdorf. When you look up German conductor in the dictionary, Eric's picture is there. He's one of the old-fashioned tough. And I can tell you stories about that. But anyway.
It's like, can you write that down for me, please?
So anyway, we got ready to do this recording of the Bartok. And the deal was going to be they were going to record the BSO playing it and the festival orchestra playing it, and then they were going to show rehearsals of the BSO and the students and how they compared, blah, blah, blah. And so we're in the main shed, and lots of lights. It's hot on the pistols in like July. And again, a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around. It's Leinsdorf. And he goes, "I'll show you boys off today." Okay. So we get to that section with the glissandos, and we play it. And he goes over to the piano. There's a song. Da, 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 da. He said, da, 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 da. He sings the words. Says, "Well, we'll do it again." Back at whatever it was. We do it again. It's better than the first one. And then he goes on, and he said, "Well, let's just do it one more time." We go back and we do it again. Now it's really kind of got a lot of hair on it. It's pretty good. As a matter of fact, if you find it and look at it, the bass trombone player, when I play my glissando, he looks at me and starts laughing. So, those were really great experiences. The BSO, I went to as many rehearsals as I could. I later got to know Armando Catala, who I consider one of the greatest trumpet players in the 20th century. Hearing them play, it was fantastic.
So something I've always wanted to ask you about, when, Vietnam War is starting to happen, and there's this opportunity to audition for West Point, the West Point band, meaning you could be in the band and not, you would be assured not being shipped out, right? So I'm trying to think, auditions are hard enough, but an audition where that if you don't win, that you could, be drafted or something.
So I was at Tanglewood, and I got a letter from the Department of Defense, said that your current status is 1A.
Ooh.
And I had to appear at the draft board in Wayne County, which is downtown Detroit. So I go down there, and there are 3 or 4 guys sitting at this table. And the guy in charge had one of those flat top haircuts, sticking straight up. And, didn't look like he'd ever been to a concert before, let's put it that way. He's looked down at my thing and he says, "Listen, young man, these are all music classes." I said, "Well, I'm a music major." It's like he was completely befuddled the fact that I was actually studying music. So I was at Tanglewood, and I was, concerned about what the future was. And somebody said, "Well, you audition for one of the service bands." So I called up West Point because Tanglewood's not far from West Point. And the guy said, "Well, we really have all the trombones we need." I said, "Well, could I just come down and play and you can keep my name on file?" He says, "Sure, come on down." So I drive down there and I go, and he said, one of the guys in the band is going to hear you play. And I'm going to say the name Ray Turner, and none of you are going to know who Ray Turner was. But when Ray Turner left the Army, he eventually ended up being principal trombone in the Detroit Symphony for a short period of time. So he takes me upstairs to one of the practice rooms and says, "Okay, bolero." Ride of the Valkyries. I said, Mahler 3. I thought I was auditioning for a band, but they had said, "Well, we have no openings." So I play for quite a while, about half an hour. He said, "Just stay here." And he leaves and comes back with a chief warrant officer. And he says, "We have a spot for you after all." And that meant, because it went one of the premier bands and the academy bands, it meant you were guaranteed not being shipped out to Vietnam. So that was good,
So it's a lesson in being proactive right there.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, because who knows what would have happened.
Lots of good players were there, tons of good players. Rob McGregor was there, who went into L.A. Phil. Hal Jenks was there, went on the Metropolitan Opera. Don Harwood was there. Paul Kraswicki was there, tuba player in Philly Orchestra. Terry Cravens was there. I'll never forget, honestly, and maybe Don doesn't know this story, but one of the first concerts we played outside was at a band shell down on a point, and there was no place to park, so you had to always end up walking. I'm walking towards the band shell, and I hear, "Ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, 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 ba-da-da-da," just louder, like a cannon, And I finally got there, and it was Don Harwood just practicing the first 4 notes of Prelude Act 3 over and over again. I mean, loud. And so those were great experiences. And then a good friend of mine, Mike Lassiter, who was another bass trombone player, had studied at Oberlin. So Mike didn't like the Armies so much. But I made him what I call, they were asking me today, our daily vitamins. Our daily vitamins were every day that we were on a parade together, which was more often than we wished, we would go over to the stairwell next to the locker room and play the outer voices of Brahms First and Schumann 3. Every time we were on a parade. And we were probably on 50 or 60 parades together. So when I went out to play that in first auditions after that, I had a bump. I kind of felt like it was good. I could do that.
Is that when you first started to notice? I want to talk more about this when we get into talking about your career with the symphony, but noticing the importance of balance in your playing when you're playing really loud things.
Henry Smith, again, said that many times when he was doing sectionals with Interlochen, and then in some master classes I played with him at Michigan. And he said this over and over again: a chord will never sound right in the audience, never sound right, even if it's perfectly in tune, if it's out of balance. If it's not in balance, it's never going to sound right. And he's right, 100% correct.
And in a way, I kind of mean balance as far as you're playing super loud marching things, and then
soft.
Then you practice something soft. So
I don't know if I did that purposely, but I believe in that. I believe very much in what Benjamin Franklin said: moderation in all things. You've got to practice high, you got to practice low, you got to practice loud, you got to practice soft, you got to practice short, you got to practice long, and then you've got to be musical. And how do we go about that? I was just as bad as many students that I've heard and people that I hear playing auditions. If you asked me to play back in the day when I got out of the Army in 72, if you asked me to play Bolero 5 times, pretty sure I could play it 5 times without a mistake. Pretty sure. Matter of fact, I'm damn sure. But how musical was that? Not as musical as it was after I'd played in the Dallas Symphony for 10 years. It got better. Reaching out for that musical thing, I think that's so important, especially if you play in an orchestra for a long time. I mean, how many times can you play Tchaik 4 before you think, really? But But if you think of it musically, you can make it a lot more fun to play. And whether or not the audience could hear it always, I was certainly trying to do that. So balance is a really important thing.
So continuing your proactive streak that was pretty clear throughout your life, when you were living up there, and anyone that's never been up to that area in the Hudson Valley, it's really beautiful. Right on the river, and you can take the train line all the way to New York City. And so you took advantage of that and went to New York a lot and studied with the Ed Herman principal in New York and Per Breivik. Got to go to a lot of concerts at Carnegie.
Lots.
How was that experience going to New York City?
Well, the first time I went to New York City, I came across the Tappan Zee Bridge. Okay, not the George Washington, the Tappan Zee. And you get off at just a little ways and you see Broadway. I'm there. Boom, I get on Broadway. Well, I'm like 45 minutes north of downtown. I drive all through Harlem, all the way down Broadway till I finally get to Times Square. That was an experience, I can tell you. Going to concerts, I just heard so many great concerts. At that time, if you had a military ID, you could get a free seat if this building was not sold out. I remember taking my friend Lassiter to hear Chicago play Mahler 5 in 1970. Probably the greatest live concert I ever heard. They played Kindertotenlieder on the first half and Mahler 5 on the second half. I found out later, because I got a chance to briefly know Herseth, and he said that, I remember that day, it was in the fall, and I knew I had to play Mahler tonight, so I only played 9 holes of golf that day. He went out and played, it was like October or November. It was pretty damn cold out. I can close my eyes and see it now. We had box seats out near the behind the violins in Carnegie, as far over as you could get. So I could see Bud sitting there. And you just sitting there looking around. Not like a care in the world, They played the first half, so the second half, Schulte, very energetic in his younger, until he got older, but he was very energetic, very, very German looking, And he comes out on the podium and raises his hands. Herseth picks up his trumpet, and somebody slams the door in the back of Carnegie Hall. You hear, boom! Schulte flexes his arms, drops it to his side, and just stands there like a statue for, I would say, 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a long time. Then he very, very, very slowly raised his arms, looked to the right, looked to the left, looked back at Herseth, da-da-da-da. My heart, boom, boom, boom. And I wasn't playing. I was a long ways from the stage. But that was just incredible stuff. And to hear, whether it's Dennis Brain or Ella Fitzgerald or, I don't care, Jimmy Smith, name people that are just wonderful musicians, and to watch them do their stuff, it's just invigorating and inspiring. And I'm not sure that, yes, there are a lot of really great players. In fact, there's probably more very, very good players now than there were 30, 40 years ago. I'm not convinced there are more geniuses, more totally inspirational players. When you heard, I can put on a recording of Gatala, of Herseth playing ba-da-dum, 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 and it's literally perfect. It's perfect. And then if you put on Gatala's recording after it, it's perfect and it's really musical. And so I would always listen to his, because it just was so, it was the way the dance should be. The ballerina's dance should sound like that. And I've heard lots of other trumpet players play the ballerina's dance, and I've heard a lot of them play it very clean and very nice. But not, it's not like hearing Strauss horn second horn concerto with Dennis Brain the first time. If you all think back to the first time you heard Dennis, anybody in this room not heard Dennis Brain play Strauss 2? Raise your hand, and then you can leave.
He's coming for you.
It's inspirational. And I got to know Dennis Wick. Dennis Wick came to town to do a master class. He said to me that he knew Dennis Brain, and that he heard Dennis Brain play the Strauss horn second horn concerto probably 5 times live. He said he never heard him miss a note. What? Most people think get through it once, clean. They say, well, all right, I conquered Mount Everest, but those are amazing. And people that say, well, it's kind of a small sound, baloney. Baloney.
I mean, that brings up, the importance of live performance. And we talk about this a lot. And we talk about, we sense a shift of people valuing live performance and valuing that it's kind of okay to go hear people play live and miss things. It's real. You're in the moment. Have you noticed a shift as far as young people valuing concerts, or what expectations?
I've seen it go both ways. When I first started to teach, I was doing a lot of private lessons as well out in Irving, and I remember once they were playing the march from Symphonic Metamorphosis in the band, and I said, we're playing it down at State Fair Music Hall. You ought to come down and hear it. So they came down. I said, God, that stuff before the march is great. Like the piece starts at the march and ends at that's in. So when you walk out of the band room, the music stops. It's all locked inside the band room. And then I've had a bunch of students that started to come to concerts, come to a lot of concerts, and that was good. And of course, once you have some starting to go, then others think, well, this is good. You should come. I think at Dallas, if you don't come down and hear the Meyerson, hear music in the Meyerson, you're just missing a tremendous opportunity. It's one, I think I've played in almost every great concert hall in the world. It's certainly in the top 5. No question, and it might be in the top 3.
It's a nice office to go to every day.
It's a nice place to practice. Yeah, I miss practicing there.
Yeah.
Because when you practice there, you fill up the room. Now I play upstairs in an office with a carpet and walls right there.
It's not the same?
It's not the same. It's not close to the same. That's a great advantage for people that play in orchestras. They get to move their air out there all the time. Yeah.
So 1972, we win I like to say we, like I get to include myself, Dallas Symphony audition. What do you remember from the audition?
Well, a couple of things. One, they asked me to play the pizzicato movement from the Tchaikovsky Fourth Symphony. The whole thing. By myself. And that's kind of stood out. Why would they want to hear that? I found out later why. But
previous people.
Well, you just want to be articulation. How clean can you play? Is it really, really clean? And at that time I was in a period of, I wanted to play all my warm-up, my daily routine, all my lip slurs with a metronome. Back in the day, those Franz, Seth Thomas things, click, 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 click. I had taken it with me to Dallas, and I had it sitting out there, and and one of the guys from the orchestra came in just to tell me I was time to play, and he said, I was so impressed that you were playing your lip slurs with a metronome. As I said today in the masterclass, everything counts. Everything. And I think that got me a tiny bit leg up. He thought that was impressive. And when Matt Good and Darren McHenry won the job in the Dallas Symphony, one of the reasons they won is that they would often stay after the concert on Saturday night and play the music for the next week. And just the two of them. And Litton came out of his dressing room, everybody was gone, he came to the elevator, and he heard these two people out on stage playing the next week's music. And he was very impressed.
Was it true that, I remember you talking about in school that your first concert with the Dallas Symphony, was it Firebird and Bolero?
My first concert as principal. I played second trombone for 2 years.
Okay.
My first concert as principal was Firebird Bolero.
Like, welcome.
Yeah. Hello, And we just, we played it so much. I think that was with Anshel. And then when Louis Lane became the acting music director, we did it again with him right away. And it was funny because Louis was a very particular sort of guy. I played for him before I went and took the audition for the LA Phil. And I was playing La Gazoladra. And he says, for me, the C is just a little sharp. In the middle, he says, the C is just a little sharp. That was impressive that his ear was so fine. So anyway, we play Bolero, and I put my horn away, and he comes walking by, and he says, bravo. Next night we play it again. He comes walking by, and he says, semi-bravo. What does that mean? And I played Bolero a lot, and then we had a visiting concertmaster, a guy named Jake Krochmalnik. Jake Krochmalnik was the concertmaster of the Philly Orchestra. And we left there, and he came down and played a a season with us. And we played Bolero that year, too. And I put my horn away, and he comes by. And he's a concertmaster, Philly Orchestra. I turn around and see him, and he says, I've heard a lot of boleros. Now, let me tell you, kid, that was pretty good. Let me tell you, kid, that was pretty good.
How many times do you think you played it, if you had to guess?
I was talking to Will Roberts about it. Will thinks it's over 100, but I think it's maybe less than that, maybe 70.
Did you ever feel comfortable?
Well, it's an interesting way of phrasing it. I was never afraid. I was never petrified with fear. I was always anxious. If you don't sit there and hear those first taps and have your rear end tighten up just a little bit, then you're not alive.
I heard in the masterclass today that we learned to keep the rear end.
Try to keep it relaxed.
It's important.
Not the last time, but back about half a dozen, we did it on the opening concert, the festival, they have at the beginning of the year, the big gala, and it was Biat, and they brought in some singer, some opera singer, I don't remember. And of course, all opera singers think they can sing Broadway. So she starts off singing like 40 minutes of arias. Beautiful, lovely. We're all sitting out there. No intermission. Now a bunch of Broadway tunes. A whole bunch of them. Last concert in the program, Bolero. So I really hadn't it wasn't like a normal warm-up that I would do for Bolero. I'd been sitting out there playing Broadway tunes and stuff like that. And when Jaap would look back at you to cue you, let's just say it was intense. He would look right at you and not blink for the whole thing. And as I said, I think all my boleros with Jaap were positive. He would always give me a big smile. And honestly, I will say this, Mr. Van Zweden is a difficult man, a very great violinist, and really quite an amazing technician and musician in some ways. He was not always very kind to everyone. But he was always extremely gracious to me personally. He one time, and I don't want to pat myself on the back, but we just came back from finishing the tour from Europe to Mahler 6, and I went over to congratulate him on the tour, and he said, if everyone played as well as you or as dedicated as you were, I could stay here forever.
What makes a conductor great?
Boy, that's a big can of worms, That's not an easy question. If you watch, I'm a huge fan of Carlos Kleiber. If you haven't watched videos of Carlos Kleiber, immediately go out and watch him conduct anything. You'll just be astonished at how musical it is. But great conductors are a unique blend of drill sergeant, psychiatrist, musicologist, inspirational speaker, good with their hands or not good with their hands, good with their face, good with their eyes, knew which people need to get what kind of reinforcement, positive or negative, the great ones. The old style, where you talk to guys, and one of the things that I loved when I was at West Point, I had a chance to meet Gunther Schuler's father. Gunther Schuler's father played second violin for Toscanini. And he told me all these amazing Toscanini stories about what a wild man he was and how difficult it was to play for him and all that. But that's gone. I think the conductors that I've played for that I enjoyed the most, it was a cooperative experience. You played something, and if you played it beautifully or the way they wanted it, you would see some response towards you that was positive. Yes, you played beautifully, thank you, sort of deal. They don't need to come backstage and shake your hand or anything like that. Just the sharing of the musical creation experience. And not many conductors do that, in my opinion. Now, there are a lot that get up there and it's all fun and games, and let's break for tea, and all that stuff. Well, we know if they're fakers and phonies or frauds. We know that right away. I remember having a dinner with, so bad with names. He was the music director of the St. Louis Symphony, and he passed away very young. And we were at Svoozy's. And I said to him, orchestras evaluate a conductor in about 90 seconds. He says, yeah, conductors evaluate orchestras in about 90 seconds. And he's right. He's right. He's absolutely right. I loved Eric Lansdorf. I thought he was great. I loved Kurt Masur. We did all the Brahms symphonies with Kurt Masur. They were great. And it's like Brahms was somehow, he was there, you know. It was just great. And so when those experiences happen, you know, we're junkies for that. We're all junkies for those moments where you play well, the conductor likes it, your colleagues like it. That, I guess if the audience likes it, that's fine, but it's irrelevant in a certain way. You know, you're playing. Who do you play for? I play for me first. I play for the trombone second. I play for my colleagues third. I play for the conductor fourth, maybe audience. It's about the same, you know. But I'm not starting off thinking, oh, I have to please the conductor. I've never pleased myself when I thought the conductor didn't like it. There are always some conductors are just really good at some repertoire. Masur was great at Brahms and dark Germans. Dutoit, French music, fantastic. Petrushka, Symphony Fantastique with him, great, absolutely great. Peter Flohr, I love playing Bruckner for him, just really great. He just, you know, you could just tell that not only did they understand it, they loved it and cared about it. They're just not up there beating time. Anybody can beat time. And if you watch Carlos Kleiber, you realize he doesn't beat time that much. There's a lot of times he's not beating time at all. And yet, it's so musical, you think. I'll never forget seeing him conduct Brahms second on video, first time. And I was listening to it and I thought, I want to play this piece. I've played Brahms second a bunch, but I've never played this piece. I want to play this piece. And that was, you want to give conductors too much credit, but sometimes it really does make a difference, the ones that get it.
Were you good at, how are you with letting go of things that don't go well in a concert?
Not great. not great. You know, like everybody else, I mean, I probably played Brahms first. Oh my God. Let's just say 50 times. Maybe more. But let's say 50. One time, the high A didn't come out at all. It was silence, bum, bum, bum. And the conductor said, did you play the A? The rest of the chords were so well in tune, he sort of sympathetically heard the A, right? That didn't make me happy. But I wasn't one that kept it for days and days and days. I think sports helped that. Sports, I think there's a relationship between sports and playing the trombone. I really do. You have to want it really bad, no matter how talented you are. Lots of really great musicians out there. And it's something that I really believe strongly in, and that is, I've known people that say, oh, you know, I played my career in the Dallas Symphony. I never got into Philadelphia, so I'm kind of a failure. Well, that's just so stupid. You know, it's just so stupid. Wherever you are, I don't care if you're playing in Keokuk. If the people that are there that night want to hear Brahms first and you're the guy playing it, you're there to play it for them. And if that experience is good, that's great. No less important than somebody playing it in Vienna. It's the same.
It's easy to forget that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole art is a service. And it's like if you're playing at the VFW in the middle of Iowa, it's still, these people are leaving their problems to come to a concert.
Be inspired by the music. Absolutely, 100%.
So I'm curious, just a couple of questions about your time in the Dallas Symphony, because, you know, 43 years, for a lot of the time in the same office, you could really build in a lot of structure in your life. So on a concert day, what was your typical routine like to really bring out the most efficiency for you?
Well, once again, it's about being able to do it all the time. You know, if you're playing, let's say we're doing Bruckner 8, an easy blow. So you do Bruckner 8, you run through it on Thursday morning, all the way through, and then you got to play it Thursday night. Then you got to get up and get ready to play it Friday night. So I'm not playing boats of etudes in between. I am very disciplined. I play in the morning all the time. I didn't like to get to 1 o'clock. I had to play in the morning. hopefully before 9. And I did today. Before I came over here, I was warming up at 8:15. The same warm-up I've been doing since college.
All 11 positions?
All 11 positions. I'm very structured about that. You know, the old saying, I don't know if it was Heifetz, but it was one of them. It said, if I miss a day of practice, I know it. If I miss 2 days, my wife knows it. If I miss 3 days, everybody knows it. And that's true. So I'm very disciplined about that. And I'm also very disciplined about the basics. If you came and looked at my trombone stand, you'd see Rochu sitting there, and Koprash, and Kreutzer. I play some Masson a lot. But I'm going to play legato. I'm going to play staccato. I'm going to play loud. I'm going to play soft. If I'm playing really, really loud in the orchestra, if I'm playing Bruckner 8, I'm not at home practicing fortissimo. I might be playing cello suites or Fink legato studies or Tyrell tuba studies, you know, balance in all things. And I really tried to do that. I was talking to Tom Ashworth. Tom said that at the end of the semester, he liked to take a month off and not play. We were having lunch on. Whoa. You know, the last time I took a month off was a thing called basic training. That was 10 weeks I couldn't play. And that was the last time I spent that much time without playing the trombone.
This is a big question. What musical moments stand out to you?
Well, the first night in the Meyerson was pretty good. That wasn't bad. It was pretty good. I'll remember that for a long time. The first time we played in Berlin, the concert hall, the audience sits behind you, of course. And we played Bartok Concerto, and we played Roman Carnival for an encore. Whoa! We hit that chord, and the guy behind me was obviously very excited. I mean, he started yelling and screaming and stomping his feet, nearly dropped my trombone. That was very, very exciting.
You say you're bad with names, but you remember like every concert and what was played. And
I remember amazing. A lot of them. Yeah, it's true. That was really exciting. I can think of bits and pieces here and there, you know, a Brahms chorale that went really, really well. Or I remember playing, we played opera for 13 years. My first 13 years, we did 2 months of opera, or 6 weeks or something. And we did the Ring. We did the whole Ring. And, you know, we all sit around, Ride of the Valkyries, oh, that's really great stuff. But the chorales in the third act of the Valkyries, they are so beautiful. I mean, they are stunningly beautiful. So those are great. And if you get to the last 2 pages of Gaudeamerone and you don't feel the chill that goes up your whole spine, you're dead. You need to be doing something else. Those are amazing moments. They're just amazing. They were thrilling every time, every single time.
What did it mean to... Your wife is in the Dallas Symphony, and for how long were you guys in the Dallas Symphony together?
Not very long.
Not very long.
I noticed that she'd gone to the University of Michigan 10 years after I did. And I went over, and I remember, I said, boy, you're another Michigander. We should go to lunch sometime. So I said, well, let's go to lunch. We'll go over to Le Cave. Le Cave was a place over on Knox Henderson where you could go in. It was a French bistro, and you could walk to the side, and they had racks with wine, and you just pick out your own wine and take it to the front. They'd open it for you, and you'd bring your sandwich.
Smooth.
Yeah. And I had recently taken a wine class, so I thought, you know, I'm going to impress this young lady with my, you know, je ne sais quoi, about how much I knew about wine. So we poured the wine. She was getting ready to drink. I said, no, before you drink it, let's swirl a little bit, and then, you know... And then let's listen, smell the vapors, and, you know. So we do that, and I said, what does it smell like to you? And she says, dirty sweat socks. I went, okay. So we drank a bottle of wine, and we're walking back to do more of these conductor things, and she's like, like that. And fortunately for me, I mean, we got married not long, it wasn't a long time. And she's been one of the most influential musical teachers in my life because she's so musical. She plays the violin spectacularly well. And I would play things for her, whether it's Blair or Mahler 3 or whatever. And she would always have some musical idea about how it could be better. As a matter of fact, the last time we did it with Yop, this stagehand's got a big kick at us. Of course, there are no woodwinds to speak of in the Mozart Requiem, so we were sitting down where the oboes sit, right in front of Yop. And I was sitting there kind of playing it after rehearsal, and they had to do something with the stage. The stage guys were coming out to move stuff around, and Diane gets up on the podium, and she said, I was getting ready to get up. She said, no, stay there, play it for me. So I played it for her there in the Meyerson and got a lesson on the best way to freeze the tuba mirum.
I mean, not many people get to work with their spouse, and then in such a unique way, getting to work with her and getting to share so many musical experiences. Traveling, getting to talk about work.
Yep.
Because not all the time that can be a good thing, but that sounds like really special. You got to share all those.
It was in this case, and because she is monumentally patient.
Well, she's married to you.
Yeah, she's married to me, and she's willing to. At one time, I probably had 8 Edwards bells, maybe 15 lead pipes, 15 tuning slides, all back in the guest bedroom, and she'd have to sit there and. I would bum bum ba 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 beam ba bum beam bum. How do you like that one? Try this one. Try this. This is lead pipe. And after a while, she said, "Oh my God, it's enough." But she probably knows extras better than most wives, and she knows them really well. And this has been an absolute. I'm the luckiest guy in the world as far as that.
So I want to talk about teaching.
Yep.
And then I want to close with some rapid fire questions, as we always do. What's the most important trait of a teacher?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think the ability to diagnose the student's performance abilities and how quickly best to modify that behavior to reach the result that you wish. And I'm lucky. I did a lot of stuff pretty naturally. The embouchure you see now is the one I had in the 4th grade. It hasn't changed. Other stuff has changed. I've thought about my vowel sound more and all that kind of stuff. But the ability to see and recognize, the symptoms of too much tension in the throat, a vowel sound that's bad, too much pressure, just not breathing well, maybe poor concept, all those things, and then you have to find a way to modify the students, to help them modify their behavior. And most importantly, you got to get them to buy into it. You've got to get them to think that this is important for them, and that they're not waiting for you to say, "Bless you, son, now you have the answer." No teacher can do that. But you can get them to buy into it. Bill Parcells, I was listening to a radio broadcast driving someplace, and they asked, back when he was coach for the Cowboys, they said, "Bill, do you practice against all the trick plays that other teams might play against you? Do you practice against all that stuff?" He says, my main job is to get everybody's eye on the prize, to get everybody to understand what the prize is. So I was walking through the building today on the way over to this interview, and there were some guys there in there lifting weights, and I walked over and said, just because you're here doesn't mean you're committed. Just because you take a trombone lesson and practice a little bit, it doesn't mean you're committed. There's a big difference between being committed and just being there.
So I feel like you've always been so good at, the first lesson, you're like, I already have a job, I'm going to tell you everything I know, but it's your responsibility. You've always been very good at letting them know their success is dependent on them, but at the same time, you have to get them to buy in. I mean, how do you get them to buy in?
Well, sometimes it helps if some people that were there before them have gotten jobs. That helps a lot. I personally believe that most young people like to be challenged. They like structure. They like to be told if they're doing well or not. To be honest with them and say, "Oh, this isn't very good. You can do this better." There's nothing wrong with that. Not a thing. Whether they're going to be trombone players or bricklayers or CEOs of a major company. If you're not willing to commit to do it better, find a way to be better, well, then you're just a carbon footprint. You're not adding to anything.
if you had to pick a single trait, and this is hard, I'm sure, but a single trait that, I mean, you've had so many successful students, and Southern Methodist University, you're not necessarily getting the talent pool that a Juilliard gets every year, and the level of success you've had with your students is incredibly respectable. And what, if you had to identify one trait that most of your successful students that kind of figured it out had, what would you say it is?
I think buying into the program, just deciding that they were on the right path. I was going to show them and be committed to helping them get better, and then for them to really commit to it, to just be dedicated to it. Like that. And maybe that's it's a plus and a minus. I've had students that have been successful, yes, but I've also had other students that I've taught at some festivals or gone and did a master class, and they're from Dallas. And I'll say, well, you didn't even audition at SMU. How come you didn't come to SMU? Well, I just heard that you were just a flaming asshole, and that nobody wanted to study with you because you were such a terrible person. And I said, well, I don't think that's true.
Where do you think that comes from?
Because I'm demanding. And I've had, not everyone, but a lot of my students have had the lesson of, and I did it last semester. They're playing a copra etude. Bump, 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 that one, okay? And they can't play it. And I can just tell they really haven't committed to it. And so I'll usually say, all right, I'm going to walk out of here for 10 minutes. And when I come back,
some trauma right now.
I expect the first 2 lines to be perfect. And then usually slam the door on the way out. Walk around for 10 minutes. And come back, and almost universally, it's better. Why? I'll ask them why. Because they're afraid that I'm going to yell at them some more. Well, you have to practice like that every day. If you imagine I'm standing there, fine, I don't care. But just if I have to make you practice like that, you're never going to be worth a darn. You got to learn to do that by yourself. And I think they know I'm not BSing them, that I really mean that.
It's really nice to hear that wasn't just me. I feel
trust me, it wasn't
scared
just you.
Hearing that story, but also feel better that I wasn't the only one. I distinctly remember you're like, I'm going to walk down the hall and I'm going to buy a Coke. And of course, all of his students know he always buys the Coke and drinks half of it.
That's
because
true.
The bottom is gross.
That's true.
I can't drink that. There's always a half bottle of Coke sitting on the thing in the studio. But it worked, and it showed you, like, there's always a level of motivation that can go higher. Obviously you don't want to have to be yelling.
No.
But, and you weren't yelling. But, your students know you had a picture of Bobby Knight, picture of Vince Lombardi on the wall, known for, semi-controversial figures, very successful figures in their own times. What did you learn from them? Why did they motivate you as a teacher?
Well, like I said, I was an athlete. And golf was a big part of my life. And of course, my father was even bigger part of my life. I remember on golf, for example, I liked to hit the 4-wood. I didn't like to hit the long irons. Didn't like it. I'm talking when I'm like 9, And we get to a shot on a hole, and he'd say, I'd pull out the 4-wood. He says, think that's a 4-wood shot? Maybe not. Maybe it's 3-iron. He said, take the 3-iron out. It's not the 3-iron's fault. You learn to hit it. Good lesson. I'm the perfect example of white man can't jump, but I was a very, very accurate shooter back in the day. When I was at Interlochen, I practiced basketball every day, because I knew I was a captain of the basketball team the next year, and I wanted to win. So those kinds of dedication and commitment were, and I think that everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets a medal idea that we're in now is just a lot of baloney. You have to learn that if you work hard, there's a reward. And if you don't achieve, you don't get a reward. That's okay. We need to teach that right away. And so athletics made me realize that the harder I worked, the better I got. Trombone playing came easier. It really did. It wasn't as hard. I was a better trombone player than I was a basketball player. But I did okay. I did okay because I worked so hard. As a matter of fact, my coach, Billy Joe Young, I had hyperextended my knee about halfway through the season. So he had to tape my knee every day during lunch so I wouldn't miss practice time at the end of school when basketball practice would start. So we always taped it at lunch. And we got near the end of the season, and he's taping me up, and he says, John, I've never seen anybody with so little ability accomplish so much. Well, thanks, Coach. I feel a lot better now. But there's a lot of truth to that. And honestly, what you just said is true. Some of my most satisfying teaching experiences over time have been a student who comes in. I remember, I won't say who, was a lady, young lady, and just didn't play that great, and she just got better and better and better. By her senior year, she made the finals for an orchestral job. Didn't get it, but she got married and had kids. But that, to me, that was remarkable. Just remarkable. When you came in, just not that good. And worked and worked and worked and then got to be good. And that's good stuff.
I really want the trombone world to hear your answer to this question. How have you seen the trombone's sound evolve over time?
Well, it's evolved.
How do you feel about it?
It's evolved a lot, and I think it's better now than it was, 20 years ago, where bigger was better. Let's all take our lead pipes out and play bass trombone slides. And, as who was it, Chris Afuli, or either Chris Afuli or Kleinhammer, who said, I want to make sure that I'm on the right side of the tuba and the rest of the section sits to my right, not to my left. And that's not a slam up against Chicago, but I'm just saying, in my opinion, you have the tuba, you have the bass trombone plays this sound, you have the second trombone plays that sound, and you have the first trombone plays this sound. It's more like a pyramid. It's not a cylinder like this where all the sounds are exactly the same. But if you listen to, as old guys like me, one of the first recordings I ever heard and watched on TV was a movie called Fantasia by Walt Disney. That was Charlie Gusikoff playing first trombone in Philly Orchestra. That was a pretty bright cracker there he was playing. And then, guys, a lot of first trombone were playing no valves, just straight ahead tenor trombone. I was very influenced by Tommy Dorsey. My dad had tons of Tommy Dorsey recordings, and I listened to them all the time, and they were just so beautiful. Such beautiful legato and breath control. And then I became aware, obviously, of Chicago and Henry Smith by the time I was in junior high, and Henry played the 8/8H, and Henry's background was on euphonium. So Henry had a kind of a euphonium tenor con sound, which was very, very, very warm and kind of embracing, and then I heard Chicago. And of course, my favorite recordings, some of my most favorite recordings were with and Chris Afuli and Kleinhammer and Jacob. That's really one of my favorite trombone sections of all time. But that sound was still clear, bigger than in the 30s, clear, it still sounded like trombones. Then we went through a period of time where trombones almost sounded like, euphoniums or sarasophones or something. I don't know. They didn't have the character quality of the human voice. We play the tenor trombone, it should sound like a tenor voice. I believe that. And when I began listening to Fritz Wunderlich and hearing that unbelievably beautiful tenor voice, it made me think about the way the way the air should move and the way the sound should vibrate.
The first time you played that Granada recording in your class,
yeah,
I still play that for my students.
It's amazing. And I think that now, look at when I would take in auditions, nobody played an alto trombone. Nobody. You played everything on, my first 11, 12 years in the orchestra, I played everything on the 8/8H. 42B, everything. Beethoven 5, Missa Solemnis, I don't care. I played it all on that. And then I got a 36B from my former roommate in college who taught at Ohio State. And then John Osborne, I was playing with Them Bones, it was a jazz group, and I went in there with a 42B, and he said, you can't play that, let me give you this other horn over here. So he gave me a 6H, a Conn 6H, beautiful instrument from the 60s. And I've played the last, 20 years, Beethoven 5, Schubert Great C Major, Beethoven 9, all that stuff I played on the 6H. I only played the alto on Mozart Requiem. I like a sound that sounds like a human voice, that sounds like a singer. I really like that.
I feel like I think it's a trait, and there's a lot of bias in this room, but I think it's a trait of you and your students is color, overtones.
Oh, I agree, totally.
Resonance,
Absolutely.
clarity, and it's a special thing. So I for time, I want to transition to our rapid fire section that we always have.
I'm not a very rapid guy, but that's fine.
Well, I'll just cut you off. Advice to your 18-year-old self.
Relax a little bit.
Good one. What is the best compliment you can give yourself?
I did the best I could.
Do you have any regrets?
Oh, too many to mention. Lots and lots and lots. And as you get older, you realize, as the famous philosopher Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And you take those forks in the road, and then at the end of your life, you look back and you see, well, I made this one, I did that one, and that's your life. And could you have been more sensitive to your wife or your children? Could you have spent more time just being a better human being? Yes. I was so fixated on being a trombone player and doing the job. So I made mistakes. I get emotional about it. I can tell you a story about my dad, if you'll allow me, and cut this out if it's really just too sappy.
No.
My father was a great man, and he got ill. He was dying. So I went to Florida to see him in a veterans hospital. And he was all hooked up and just, it was terrible. I had to tell him I loved him. I came back to Dallas. And I got a call from my sister. Said, we're going to unhook Dad, but we'll wait for you to get here if you want to come. It was the day that I recorded Mahler 3. So I had to decide to go play Mahler 3 or go see my dad. I made the wrong choice. But I thought I had this responsibility to my colleagues to be there. And that's probably my biggest regret. And I'm sorry I got so emotional about it, but my dad was a really important person in my life. And to not be there when he died, pretty tough.
The way you've described your dad, do you think any part of him, do you see any part of him maybe telling you to go play the concert?
Absolutely. He would have said 100%. 100%. 100%. He was, I don't have all the particulars. And if I stretch the truth, it's still a good story. But this is in the early 40s. And back in Wisconsin, back in those days, if you went to district solo and ensemble contest, you got a rating of first, second, third, so forth. But they picked a winner, a second place, and a third. Then you went to state contest, and you were rated there, and they picked a first, a second, and a third. And of those, all the state winners went to a national contest, where you picked a first, a second, and a third. He won 2 firsts. And then I was here when he came back, and he had to be a band director. I think he could have been a trumpet player. Do I know how much that hurt him or how he felt? I know that he felt proud. Goodness gracious, this is like a therapy session, for God's sake.
Welcome to the Trombone Retreat podcast.
We are emotional people. We really are. We're very emotional people. And dealing with emotional people and being chairman of the Players Committee and dealing with 90 other emotional people is not always so easy. But we can take those emotions and use them to our benefit and not hide them. When I was 18, I said, relax. When I used to take auditions, I think I was so intense. I think I put people off a little bit. When I learned to relax just a little bit more and try to think more about the music and trying to just be part of the. If you haven't read Zen and the Art of Archery, get it and read it. That's a good one. It helps, all that stuff. So,
well, thank you for being open about that, and I think anyone that has studied with you knows, even like you said, if some people have a perception of you, I can speak for myself that I always thought the level of integrity and how strict you were at times was coming from a deep place of caring about me. And I think a lot of people in this room feel the same way. And I still remember that. So a slightly lighter question that
Sure.
I think you'd be perfect for. And you're totally failing at the rapid fire so far. So just
not my first time at failing, trust me.
What is a golf lesson that you've learned from golf that has helped your music, or a music lesson that has helped your golf?
Well, first of all, they both have rhythm. If you can't figure out the rhythm of golf swing, you got a problem. Another thing is that I can close my eyes and envision a perfect golf swing. I can see it. I actually can feel it. The same for playing Corral and Brahms first. I can envision it. I can feel it. And then I want to make it happen out the end of the bell.
I love that. Settle the great debate. Rubber stopper at the end of your slide.
I've got so many of them lined up across there. And, this year I got to clean out my studio after May. I don't know where I'm going to put all those rubber stoppers. Maybe we should melt them down and make a big rubber ball.
There's nothing I get asked more, and I guarantee the people in this room are the same. The second they find out you're a Kitzman student, it's the first question. They go, does he really make you take that off? Like, he doesn't make you.
Don Lucas, I'll never forget it. Don came over from Lubbock, took a lesson. We did the thing, we took it off, and I stood in the corner, and he played it with it on and with it off, and I picked it with off. He still thought I was crazy. And he left and came, about a month later, he called me and said, damn it, I can hear a difference when that rubber stopper's not on there. He says, I can't believe it.
It's well documented on this podcast, so I won't go into it again, but yes, agreed. What do you think your younger self would think of the life you've created today?
Oh, he'd probably say, why didn't you go out for golf, man? You would have made a lot more money, I don't know. I think that my younger self would have realized that all the hard work. I was telling Diane the other day, because my wife is so talented. She didn't practice like I did. I can remember, and it's not like I walked 20 miles through the snow barefooted kind of baloney, but the music building used to close at like 11:30 or midnight, in Ann Arbor. And there were a bunch of Friday and Saturday nights that I was there until the building closed. Not maybe enjoying the college experience as much as if I went back and did it again, maybe I would do it differently and enjoy it a little bit more. But I can remember walking to my car at North Campus after getting kicked out of the building, saying to myself, this is going to pay off someday.
Looking at the stars.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I remember you saying that. And it did.
Sort of.
If there was a billboard that the entire world could see, and you could write anything on it, what would it say?
Make things better. In every way. I tried to make the Dallas Symphony better. I tried to make SMU better. As I've gotten older, I've tried to make my life better, and the people around me. I don't succeed a lot, but I try, I'm a big believer in there is right with a capital R, and there is wrong. There is good, and there is bad. And we should try to do more things that are right and more things that are good, because that's what humans should do for one another. And the mess that we're in right now is very discouraging. I hope we come out of it. I really do, without having to go to not just Russia and Putin. That's, yes, just another irritation, or China, or Democrats and Republicans and all that. My God, can't we just work together? The idea is to make it better, isn't it?
What will you miss most about performing? What will you miss most about teaching?
Well, I think teaching, for sure, has helped me stay relatively young, dealing with a lot of young people, and, hearing about Bitcoin or whatever, and just dealing with their problems and helping them decide whether they should go into pre-med or a student come in and say, well, I think I want to get married. And, you may want to wait just a little while. So that part, I'll sometimes, look at teachers just like students that think, I got to go take this lesson. I'm not really prepared. I don't want to do it. Teachers saying, I really don't want to drive over there today and teach 5 hours. I just don't want to do it. I'd rather do something else. But I get there and I get involved with hearing them play and all that, and I want to. You just get into it, right? And that makes it better. In terms of performing, I'm pretty sure that I'll play the trombone for a long time. Perform, probably not so much. But I think I'll play the trombone for a long time because I like it. I like it. So why not do it?
And to your previous point, I don't think I truly appreciated it until after, but I don't think you ever missed a Monday. It was like clockwork.
Not
you were
too
always
many.
there.
Yeah, I don't think I missed many.
It's not easy to do.
Yeah. But my dad didn't miss any either. And my wife's mother, she was a teacher, she didn't miss many. I'm going to just lay this on you pretty thick, but I'm convinced that the theory of each generation further removed from the Great Depression, life is easier. Yes, you have more things. You got Facebook and TikTok. Okay. If you lived through the Great Depression, that was tough. And the people who lived through that taught their children that life was tough and you had to earn everything. You had to work. You couldn't complain. You showed up, you did your job, and at the end, there was a reward. And I believe in that. I really do. And I'd like to see us get back to that more.
How do you want your musical career to be remembered?
I think that I'd like people to say that they came and heard some concerts and they liked it. And there were some inspirational moments where they heard something that lifted them up or made them feel, some beautiful thing in Bruckner or a Brahms chorale or something, or a bolero that was not just the notes, but some, prelude to ecstasy, something really pretty, something beautiful, or a song. I'd like people to remember that, and that honestly, that no matter whether the service, I don't care what it was, I did my best. Even if I missed, I did my best. I didn't take any service ever for granted.
Do you mind, something unique that the Dallas Symphony does is when someone retires, they get to address the symphony. Do you mind sharing any part of what you said to your colleagues?
Well, again, that's an emotional thing because a lot of us have spent a lot of time there. Will Roberts and I retired the same time, same year. Will couldn't speak.
Wow.
I said, and I believe this, that orchestras are filled with great players. Great players. Anybody who wins a job today is a great player. Great soloists. Everybody can play. But the good stuff, the stuff I remember, is what we did together.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say in closing?
John constantly talks down about his days at SMU, but that's really not true. John was a good student. One of those students, I will admit that I had to work a little extra hard to get him on the program sometimes.
There were girls in college and beer.
But John's a good player, and I think I had some small part of him being a good player. And I think, as it turns out, looking out, he's a pretty good person. Maybe that's good. So these things are great. I'm glad I got a chance to do this. I thank you for asking me to do it. I'm amazed that we talked all this amount of time. It just means that you're a good interviewer. But don't sell yourself short.
Thank you. And you're not allowed to make me cry on my own podcast. That's against the rules. So we're not going to go down that road. And I think I can speak for a lot of people in here where, we wouldn't be where we are without you. And you taught me how to be a man in so many ways. And you taught me about responsibility and integrity and being prepared and being responsible for my actions. And I take so much of that with me and teach it to my students. And so I just want to thank you for everything you've done. There's a lot of love for you in this room right now. And
that's what I want to be remembered. If you want to, that's good. What he just said, if you remember that, when I die, just remember that. That's good. I like that. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for the lives you've affected and the contributions you've made to the city of Dallas and the trombone world and the musical world and the education world. And just thinking about your career, it's hard to even fathom. So thank you so much, and thank you for doing this, and thank you for being open. John Kitzman.
I'm sorry about the time.
Thank you. And I said this downstairs, and some people have come and gone. You do all this, and you're not saying, come on, pat me on the back at the end. And Dennis has been so great, and Derek has been so great making this event happen. And I really deeply appreciate it, and humbled by the fact that somebody would just show up at all, because you do your thing, and it's nice to have somebody say, I'm willing to come and say you did a decent job. That means a lot. Thank you.
Man, what a legend, huh? I want to start with
Yeah. I mean, he's a special person to me, and he's been very kind to me, and he's still a mentor, and he's been so open and encouraging of me in my career, and him knowing me from such a young age, and knowing me when I was immature and still figuring things out, but he still believed in me and still pushed me. Getting an opportunity to honor him in this way was really important to me. And so I think I studied for this interview more than I've studied for anything. And I study a lot for every interview, but everyone that was there was so warm and kind and complimentary of the experience. And he was great. He was just great. And I thank him for that.
Well, I mean, I compliment you. You did a very good job. You always do a good job, but this one you did a really good job, I think, with very good leading questions that led to places. And you, like you said in the intro, him being willing to go to those places is more than half the battle, but you also asking questions that would lead him there, I think, was very impactful in both wisdom and, humorous little quips that he said, and also just retelling of stories of experiences on the stage and off the stage, and also, loss and that whole story of, choosing Mahler 3 or going to see his dad die. That was very impactful. I mean, he didn't have to go there, but I think it was cathartic for him to go there, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and that moment, I don't know if you can hear it on the recording, but there was multiple people in the audience that started crying at the same time. I
couldn't hear it.
Yeah, it triggered, similar emotions with them, I think, regarding, parents and their lives, perhaps, and just experiencing the energy of the moment. So, I mean, that, that's the thing about live interviews that can be special, and he's just such a great storyteller, and the level of success with his students for, recruiting. Southern Methodist University is a very good school, but it's not the school that's going to attract the top talent every single year, auditioning with where everyone's competing, and the people he's turned into successful players. You got to respect it. And he's done everything. I still can't believe he played in a major orchestra for that long with that season for 43 years without an assistant. So he just made it work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a feat. That's a feat for anybody. But he did it. He did it with a lot of grace. I would say is the best way to put it from the outside looking in. And it's so strange because so much of my I guess, secondhand experience of him is I'm more as a teacher because I meet his students, and like I said, I haven't met him. And so, that would be enough for a career, just the teaching part of things. But he was a very well respected and well known teacher, and also obviously a player. So, and I've heard him play, but not in person. I've heard him recordings and such.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about his recording. He has a solo recording that he made a while back that you can find, and it's great. It's great. It's one of the early records. I remember Pete Sullivan telling me he used to listen to it all the time. And I was hanging out with Jeff D the other day. He actually found an original vinyl of that recording. Wow. He does like Do Dances, and I think the Creston, and a few other things. And it's cool. It's cool. We didn't get a chance to talk about it. I would have asked him why he didn't make more, but he was proud of that. And yeah, I mean, with someone that's had a life and career that long, it's like, he was worried that he forgot to talk about certain things or thank certain people. And it's just like, it's impossible in an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes to talk about everything. But I think we covered so much, but he has so much respect for his former section mates and everyone he's played with. And Phil Graham, the second trombonist that he played with for so long in the Dallas Symphony, he just reveres him. And Eduardo Maida, the conductor, was one of his favorites. It was really special to him. So yeah, I mean, it was really cool, and I hope he's happy with it. So I'm glad we have this forever, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it. But yeah, so you're just getting back to New York, right?
I am. I was in Seattle for 3 weeks playing with the Seattle Symphony, which is always a good time, both on and off stage.
How do you mean?
We, play hopscotch, and we drink high seas, and then we go to bed at 8:30. No, it's great. The orchestra sounds fantastic. Phenomenal brass section there in Seattle. Great food. I have a lot of friends that I went to both high school and college with that play in that orchestra. I think there's 4 members of the orchestra that I went to high school with. So it's like I go back a long way with these people. So it's a reunion of many sorts, and then obviously a professional reunion of some people who I've met in my professional career. And it's always kind of, reunion to go back there. And it was good rep too. Played Tchaik 4, played Sibelius 1, and Mahler Das Lied. It's a pretty heavy rep too. Not just good, but heavy in weight. Maybe not Tchaik 4 as much, but
at least to me, there's nothing better than getting to travel. And of course, there's always limits of, how long you're away from home. Home is always home, but getting to travel and play with great music, with great musicians, experience a new city, to me, there's nothing better. I love getting to do these trips. And, what's like the limit for you? Is there a certain point where you're just like, okay, or does it depend on the place?
I mean, the place obviously has got to come into account. If you're in a place there's not much to do, it kind of gets boring pretty quick, or you don't know that many people or something like that. This time was like
Koichiro.
Oh yeah, this time was like the right amount. 3 weeks. I was ready to come back.
Yeah, that's plenty.
It was good to come back but hit the ground running here too. Just jumped right back into the Met schedule, which is pretty chaotic right now. Yeah, it's all good. I have nothing to complain about. I'm working.
Yeah.
And you were on the road yourself for just a minute there. You were down in were you in Harrisburg, or were you?
Yeah, the last couple weeks. This is we're not like faking this. This is like the first time we've gotten really talking a while. So.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
yeah, I it's January, February for most musicians is typically a little lighter, so it's like you can travel sometimes. But I went to the University of Kentucky for a residency at the University of Kentucky with Brad Kearns and his amazing studio. And I was blown away. I didn't know Brad, and he's one of my new favorite people. He's kind of like a very different kind of trombone professor, incredibly laid back, very creative, very open-minded with his students, plays all sorts of styles. We took me to the Buffalo Trace Distillery, which is amazing. And, oldest operating distillery in the country. They even operated during Prohibition because they found a loophole and they made all their bourbon like medicinal use only. Which is
right. Yeah, I think I've heard that story.
But like, I don't know. he does all this cool stuff on the side, like remodeling Airstreams and call them Airstreams. What are they called?
The trailers.
Yeah,
Oh,
something streams.
Yeah,
Something
Airstream. I think that's right.
And some cool creative things that I had to tell you about that he does with his studio. He did this thing with right before juries, he would have his students go outside and eat like 5 incredibly hot wings and then have to play their jury piece immediately afterwards just to show it's funny, but it shows them if you can get through it now, you can get it through it when you're nervous. And he did things like they had a rehearsal in a big auditorium and they had a giant screen, and once they finished rehearsal, they just watched like a Kentucky playoff game. And during commercials, he muted it and he made different people improvise based on what they saw in the commercial. They just had to make something up, like a bunch of creative stuff. And, Moped hangs with his studio, and it's just, I'm a big fan. So if anyone's in the area, definitely go seek him out for lessons or just to meet him, because he's a great human. But yeah, I mean, okay, you have to tell people. I started getting these texts from you one night. I was playing actually a trio with Weston Sprott, who's in town to do a masterclass at Duquesne, and Jim Nova, and I get this text from you like, "Hey, can you all text Koichiro and ask him about frogs?"
Well, okay, this is how it started. We were out to lunch in between services, and it was like some trumpet players and basically the low brass section. And my friend Alexander White, who's associate principal trumpet out there, and he's just like, he's a bigger than life personality. That's the only way to describe Alexander.
That is a fact.
We're sitting there and we're in the Pike Place Market, which is a big tourist attraction in Seattle, but they also have really good restaurants in there. And so we're at this restaurant, and it kind of is, it's the second floor and it's looking over the rest of the Pike Place Market. And there's pigs on top of the ceiling, like pig statues. And Jatik Clark, who's a tuba player in Oregon Symphony, he was subbing on tuba that week, and Jatik says, "Oh, there's pigs on the roof over there." And someone else says, "Oh yeah, that's kind of like, for some reason, pigs are associated with the Pike Place Market, so there's some pig statues around the Pike Place Market." And Mike Myers, section trumpet player there, says, "Yeah, it's like in Chicago. There's cow statues all over town." And then Alexander just says randomly, just absolutely randomly, "Oh yeah, and Coe's house is full of frogs." Should have been left there. That should have been the end of the story. But Coe's response is like, "Dude, what are you talking about? My house is not full of frogs. I've never seen a frog in Seattle in my life. You made that up. I do not have a house full of frogs." And so, of course, Alexander and myself being the way that we are, if someone gets that defensive over it, game on.
I'm well aware of this. That's why I try to never show you when you upset me in any way.
So now we immediately just start hatching plans of, Coe's house is overrun by frogs. There's millions of them. He has to like put them in a barrel every morning and all sorts of stuff. And it just escalates and escalates. And during the rehearsal, of course, what we do in the back row, we created a text thread called Coe's Frog Issues. And we started sending as many frog pictures and memes that we could find in there. And so then the second rehearsal ends and we go home and we keep just like laying into this. And Coe is like, "God, what are you talking about? I do not have frogs." And so I started a petition for people to sign to make Coe deal with his frog problem. And then we started a GoFundMe to get to help Coe raise the money to deal with the frogs, the exterminators and stuff. So it already got out of hand. And then
did anyone donate to that?
Yes, I did. And one other person did, I think. One other person gave like $10. And so then I decided to go on the site Cameo, where you can hire celebrities to like do a birthday greeting or whatever. And I hired William Hung, who was famous for being terrible on American Idol.
She bangs.
Yeah. If you've never seen
Ricky
it,
Martin.
look up William Hung, American Idol. It'll pop right up. And so I just wrote him. I said, "My friend Coe is really upset with how many frogs are in his house. So could you give him a little message to cheer him up?" And so this is what he gave me. Hold on.
"Hi, Coe. This is William Hung. I know you are very upset with all the frogs in your house and you are very sensitive to it. I would say that you will get somebody to deal with it. So it's okay to have a problem and then you just need to solve it. Here is a song to cheer you up. And just do it. Be what you want to be. Do what you want to do. Be true yourself and just do it. Be what you want to be. Do what you want to do because it's all up to you.
So
I like how he wasn't skeptical. William Hung wasn't like, what the hell is this about? He's just like, matter of fact, oh, I'm sorry about your frog problem. Hope you figure that out.
So, of course, that took it to like level 1 million. But then we had one other trick up our sleeve, which was Alexander bought a 5-foot inflatable frog that's holding a heart. It's for Valentine's Day that says "Kiss Me," and he's like a prince. And so Alexander only played the first half and blew up this inflatable frog and put it in front of Co's locker, which is like in the middle of backstage. And so when we exited after the second half, boom, there's this huge frog in the middle of the backstage. And at this point, like the whole orchestra knew about it. And they're like texting Co like, what's up with your frog problem? And he's like, oh my God, you know? So
what was his reaction to like the video and to the big frog?
The video, he was baffled. He did not know what to do. He was just like speechless, literally. He's like, what in the hell is going on? So that
he probably didn't know who that was.
That was no, he didn't. But then we sent the video, and now he knows who William Hung is. But that was probably the highlight of my time in Seattle. That's probably the best work I did there.
Can we take it a step further with our Trombone Retreat listeners somehow and encourage some frog-induced correspondence?
Yeah, if any of our listeners are friends with Co on Facebook, send them a quick message on Messenger and just say, thoughts and prayers about the frogs.
Everyone should just post on his like profile, like just random frog memes.
That works too.
GIFs.
That works too.
You just got frogged.
Yep. Yeah. Any way to send him a frog,
Okay, we've talked plenty. If you enjoyed the podcast, tell a friend and subscribe everywhere you download your podcasts. Also, please consider being a patron on patreon.com/Trombone Retreat and also leaving us a rating and review on iTunes and now Spotify, as it helps us quite a bit. Follow us at Trombone Retreat on all social medias and our website, tromboneretreat.com, where you can also join our mailing list, send us an email, as we love hearing from you. On Instagram, follow Nick at basstrombone444 and myself at js.vera. And as always,
if life gives you a backyard full of frogs,
pick them all up and lick their backs.
And then call William Hung.
Make a wish.
And just do it.
Just do it? Like, we just turned into
it.
Oh, that's right. I was like, are we turning into a Nike ad?
Yeah.
And just do it. It's so good. He just like rattles. He just bang. He's just like, it's got that song in the canisters. Like, pow.
Yeah. Right. Load it in the hopper. And retreat yourself.
Oh, yeah. We almost forgot.
Yeah.